Hello, hi, hey, hi, hello. Welcome to this episode of the Bionicle Inspiration Series. Today we're going to be talking all about revamps. I recently, and by recently I mean whenever the heck I post this, because this is a backlog episode, posted a thing and I said, hey, what themes do you want? And you said revamps is one of them, and a fair few people said revamps, so I've decided to do a revamp episode. And if you're like, what? I want to be able to save themes and you make them episodes, then let me know. Literally, put in the comments, I'll probably do it, As long as it's not too obscure, because sometimes people are like, oh, do this theme. I'm like, I don't even think MOCs exist that fit that theme. Or, I know, it's a little too obscure, it's kind of harder to do an episode around. But for the most part, I'll take any ideas for episodes, But I always like them being a bit more broader, like revamps, for example. So, what's a revamp? Well, if we go to the dictionary, let's read the little definition. It says, a revamp is when you give new and improved form, structure, or appearance to something. And now we know. So revamp's pretty cool. It's pretty much that. You take a set. Heck, you could even take one of your own current MOCs that isn't a set, and you just give it new life. You add something, whether it's big or small, or massively change it, or slightly change it in some way, and that's a revamp. So we're going to look at some MOCs that do that. Specifically, we're going to focus on revamps of like sets. There's no reason you couldn't revamp a MOC of your own. But that's what we'll look at today. So, first MOC we've got today is by Poor Disadvantaged, and is called Galu. And this is, of course, a Galu revamp. So who's Galu? Galu? Who's Galu? Galu is this handsome Glatorian here from one of the later Glatorian waves from our Barra Magna friends. Galu was one of my favorites. I still have him built, actually. I never took him apart. I always wanted to. He had some really cool pieces on him, but I never did. I always thought he was too cool for school, and I didn't want to take him apart. But this revamp that Poor Disadvantaged here, one thing I wanted to do, I wanted to kind of name each of the revamps that we do in this, sort of touch upon. How many MOCs are we doing? 7 different examples of revamps that you could approach. So this revamp I want to call kind of in the spirit of the character. So Galu, of course, is this, he's one of the Glatorian. He lives on Barra Magna, which of course is a desert planet, and Galu's always wandering around the desert and stuff. So kind of like we see in the movies and stuff, he'd obviously have a bit more of a sort of weathered armor and things like that, and maybe he'd have to be a little bit more accustomed to living in that harsh environment. So yeah, he was a Glatorian, which is more or less like a gladiator. He was with the Ice Tribe, and he was a Glatorian, but he decided to quit his day job, and he sort of worked as kind of like this escort for convoys and caravans and things like that. So he was kind of not really a bounty hunter, I guess. But kind of like a man for hire to some degree. So he was a pretty cool character. I actually always really liked him. So maybe you've got a similar character and some of the traits in this MOC you could apply to that one. Or you just like Galu and you want to revamp him as well. Besides the point, though, some of those specific aspects I think that Poor Disadvantage has really managed to capture by adding these additions to it. So, for example, he has all of those Thornax, weren't they fruit? I don't know, those Thornax launcher pieces there in a big net on the side of his waist like that. I think that's pretty cool. Obviously he'd be escorting people around and traveling them as per his story. So I quite like the fact that, he'd have this little bit of a sack with a bit of an extra supply near him. Maybe he'd have a few other little knickknacks in there as well for his scouting and walking around duties. Maybe a bit of water, some snacks, some nice popcorn or something. We don't know. Pretty cool. I like that idea. I think it's very in character. Like I was saying, this kind of revamp is very in the spirit of the character. So focusing more on that. I also like how he's changed up the positions of the snowflakes here. So on the original, the snowflakes were actually just attached to the upper arms, but instead, Poor Disadvantage, they actually moved them up onto the shoulders. So they've kind of become this funky, cool shoulder armor protection thing. And honestly, I think it looks fantastic. Really, really like the position of the snowflakes there. It's this really interesting kind of look to his general sort of stance and stature there. It looks really cool. But also adding all these other system pieces there to kind of very much create this kind of broad shoulder armor look to him. It changes how he looks a lot, and I think that, coupled with this awesome kind of waistcoat thing that he's got here, adding that big old ice piece there, kind of looking like kind of a bit like samurai armor or something. I think it's pretty cool. And so I think sort of those two armor additions are kind of nice because they could kind of reflect his gladiator past, and maybe he's got, armor that reflects, the stuff that he needed to protect him in the arena. I think that's pretty fitting and pretty cool and smart. Again, it's very in the spirit of the character. So yeah, maybe a character backwards, but you think the set doesn't quite reflect their true personality. So maybe add some things that, reflect their story, reflect aspects of their character or their past, all sorts of stuff like that could work quite well. Some other stuff that I like on this MOC, love the weapon. The change of that is awesome, giving it this slight angle. The actual one was just straight up, just putting in the 2 blade pieces into his hands, whereas this Portis Advantage here has made a sort of way of holding those 2 blades, giving it this slight angle, and put a bit of sort of protection in the front of it so you can't just swipe directly into his arm there if you were fighting him. Really nice addition. That angle there does a lot for the weapon, makes it look just a little bit more cooler. It's really nice. And I also really, really love the little feet design here on this MOC. It's a beautiful little concept, and primarily using a little bit more system there, but the general shape of it kind of resembles the original feet. And that's really clever, isn't it? Because, that's certainly something you could do with a revamp, is you don't want to use that exact piece. You want to do a custom version of it instead. So maybe find the pieces to kind of basically replicate it in, just using a bunch of different pieces instead of the one, prefab limb part. Or you can kind of just build in the style of another piece and kind of riff off of that and, come up with an interesting looking foot like, we've got here. So pretty cool. A really, really solid Galu revamp that's very in the spirit of the character. I really like it. Let's move on to the next MOC by Unku, and this is called Nilku Revamp. Now, Nilku was the name of the Protector of Stone. I believe there was a storybook that came out when G2 was coming out that had all the names of the Protectors, so they do actually all have canon names. Fun fact! And I really like this revamp here. So what we're going to title this revamp is sort of slight changes that actually do quite a lot for the character. You don't necessarily need to massively reimagine or repurpose the character. You could just add some small little additions that do quite a lot. Maybe the set had some posability issues for you, or you just didn't like how that armor piece was placed. It's still technically revamping it if you decide to just flip that armor piece, and that's all you do. Could be a fun thing to do. And heck, if you really enjoy playing with your MOCs, maybe doing this is a really good way to kind of get a bit more posability into it, or maybe adding some funky gear functions so you can kind of, just play around with that. Sometimes doing more kind of functional aspects to a MOC can be a really fun thing to do, or that's just what you want to do, so you do it. Anyway, let's talk about this MOC here. So we were talking about flipping pieces. He has flipped the armor pieces that were on the upper legs there. Looks pretty cool. Works quite well. Little slight addition. It's obviously just to Anuku's liking there. Always a good thing to do. Just do something that pleases your eye. Can't go wrong. But the major cool thing on this is adding that awesome sort of neck scarf thing there. Around neck scarf? I guess all scarves are neck scarves, aren't they? Because you put them on your neck. Adding that scarf there on him, I think actually does a lot for the character, because of course he is the Protector of Stone, kind of lives in deserts and stony areas, and I think that's, quite fitting for the character, and also adds a lot of character to the MOC, adds a lot more sort of personality to him, kind of makes him look like this more sort of agile, kind of street fighter, ninja kind of guy, and overall he kind of has this more slim look to him. You look at the original set next to this guy, he's a lot more buffed out with armor and things, whereas this one here, he looks a lot more kind of slimmed down and rugged. I quite like that, the idea that, he does live in the sand and it's super hot out there in the desert, so he doesn't actually have much armor on him and he just has cloth instead to kind of, shield himself from the sun or keep some of the sand out of his mouth. So again, that's another really clever thing there too, kind of playing off of the location that they live and a little bit more about the story and finding ways to reflect that in the character. But also, MOCs just look super cool when they have a cloth thing like that around their mouth. It's super awesome. Also love the fun, sort of dumbed-down, smaller version of this weapon here. It looks really cute and really cool. And, also, that was certainly one of the cases with the Protector of Stone there. He had a big old weapon there that could be a little bit more cumbersome if you're playing around with it or if you're trying to, display it on a shelf. Maybe you could just reimagine one of the weapons so it is a bit smaller, doesn't take up as much shelf space there. Or you just want to build a cute little version of it instead, and that's a fun way to revamp an aspect of the MOC or an aspect of a weapon of a MOC. It's a cool idea. So a lot going on this MOC that's not too much. It's a fairly small MOC, doesn't have a lot of pieces in it, some very subtle, slight changes, but it's doing a lot for it. I really like it. On to the next one. This is a MOC by Alpha Legendary 5, and it's Pohatu Iron Soldier variant. So what we're going to title this revamp is kind of just your own unique style. Kind of in the style of, if you will. So ages ago, I made a MOC called Tankbuster Liwa. It was a very old MOC of mine, one of the earliest ones I posted. Basically, the idea of it was just I wanted to make Liwa, but I wanted to give him like a suit of armor. It was kind of inspired by like the Hulkbuster armor from Avengers. Basically, it was just the idea. It's just Liwa in a big suit of armor, and he could take down tanks. That's why he's the Tankbuster Liwa. It was a cool idea. I kind of liked the idea of doing that, getting MOCs and giving them sort of like a unique set of armor for a specific set of circumstances, or just kind of reimagining that character in a different universe or in a different light, or giving them, new armor, or just equipping them slightly differently for some fashion. And I don't know, maybe you just really like the look of knights or the look of ninjas, or you love pirates, and so you go, I'm a build Tahu as a pirate, or I'm a build Hyuki as a ninja. Why not, So that's something you could do. This is, of course, Iron Soldier variant version of Pahatu there. So that's something that wow, those words did not want to come out. You yourself could make Pahatu or any Toa in some funky Iron Soldier variant. Could be a fun thing to do. So let's talk about the MOC. Love the sort of very massive amounts of silver additions to it. Very fitting for that Soldier Iron variant look. I feel like this is a very kind of knight-like look for Pahatu here, which is pretty cool. Really like the big old sword that he's got there. That's certainly a fun thing you could do if you were doing some sort of variant on a character, is really play up with their weapons, you know. What would they have in this sort of universe? What sort of weapons would better suit this new look? Stuff like that could be cool. Maybe they don't even have a sword. Maybe they have a gun now, or maybe they just fight with their fists, something like that. Could be cool. And also, our good friend here has included some pictures of him without all the armor. So for those of you who are playing at home and want to build this guy, this is the frame. Now you just got to add a whole bunch of armor on top of it. Or, if you don't want to necessarily just do exactly what has been done here on this MOC, you yourself could just, get that frame and add some armor on it yourself and come up with your own MOC. I always think that's a cool idea, is to just look at different frames that are out there in the world. There's a whole bunch of people who do like to do that. They like to just take all the armor off of the MOC and just take pictures of the actual frame. I might even do a Biss episode on that, do just a bunch of just frames, and you can kind of build what you want with them, whether that's I design those frames and show them to you, or that's just frames that other people have done. Oh, that's a good idea, Ben. Nice thinking. Hot in the moment live thoughts from Ben Cossy. Yeah, cool idea. So there's a frame for you right now. Do as you want with it. I think it looks pretty cool. Also, I like the color blocking on this, kind of localizing all that dark orange there on sort of just the kind of top part there of the torso. It's just, it's always something to do, just kind of localizing the color in one area there. Does look cool in blocking out your colors on a MOC. Nicely done. On to the next one. This is a MOC by Silver Wolf Productions and is called Protector of Earth. So this, of course, is the revamp of the Protector of Earth. So the original one did have these funky grey sort of stone pieces on there, and our friend here has managed to add a whole bunch of other silver parts on there just to kind of complement that, because, why only have one bit? Why not have it everywhere? And kind of, actually, this is what I was going to title this revamp, was your own unique take, or just buffing the heck out of it, because that's always fun, isn't it? We just doing that, getting a MOC and going, no, this might be cool as a Matoran, but what if I made him as a Titan? Dun, dun, dun. That'd be really cool. It is a fun thing to do. I'm sure you yourself have done that. I know I myself have done that. I just go, nah, man, I'm going to add all the armor, all the weapons. I'm going to make this guy huge. I'm going to make him a dragon with wings, and he's going to be a billionaire with sunglasses. And you make him awesome. You make him 12 times cooler than he originally was. My chair is squeaking again. Hope you didn't hear that. That's a cool idea, and that's a fun thing to do, isn't it? So why not consider doing it? Sure, of course, this MOC is still Matoran, it's still a little bit smaller, but I really like how much the simple addition of adding a little bit more silver and a big old shield and a big old hammer to this guy actually does to him. It buffs him out a fair bit more, adds a lot more to the character. Again, quite fitting for the Protector of Earth. He's got a big shield to kind of protect him from some rocks that are falling. Got a big old hammer to smelt some weapons and mine some stone and all that sort of stuff. It's a cool idea. That's the other thing too. Maybe you really love the look of another character, but you don't like the colors that it is. Well, this shield and some other parts on this MOC have actually been painted, which, that may not be something you want to do with your parts, and that's totally okay. I'm not going to force you to, but painting pieces is always a fun thing to do, and an interesting way of reimagining or revamping a character. There you go. Just something to try. Nicely done, Silver Wolf Productions. Love what you did. Let's move on to the next one. This is by Logan W. and is called Muaka Revamp. So this is a more realistic version of this original set. And I'm going to title this sort of style of revamping as How You Think It Should Have Been. So we go over to Biosector, and we look up a little bit more information about the Muaka, including how to pronounce it. Thank you, Biosector. And the first sentence straight up says, Muaka were large, tiger-like rahi. And you look at the actual set and you go, I thought it looked more like a dragon. It doesn't really look like a tiger. Maybe it does from your point of view. I personally don't think it looks... Well, it looks kind of, maybe slightly tiger-like, but not that much, right? So you go, okay, well, I'm going to build this as it was, as I reckon it should have been, as we were going to title this revamp here. And so you build a more tiger-like version of it, much like Logan has done here. So I think he's done a fantastic bang-up job. I think he's done fantastic. Love all the stripes here. Really cool way of doing that, kind of continuing it across with the tail and then repeating all of these Exoforce arms here. Looks fantastic. Really beautiful stripes shape to it. Logan actually said on Flickr, because sculpting with tubes is fun. And that's honestly one of the things I highly recommend if you're looking for some funky pieces to play around with. Get some flex tubes and definitely get some of these Exoforce arm pieces because you can get some beautiful shapes with it. And flex tube is awesome because you can go all sorts of crazy different angles and shapes and sizes and all over the place with it. It's a great idea and an awesome thing to do, that's for sure. So yeah, I think Logan's really managed to capture a really effective, awesome, agile, sleek look to this mock. And I think that's very effectively achieved with a lot of CCBS pieces here as well. And just kind of creating a lot more smoother textures and angles, specifically picking pieces that have that smoother look to them, but also nicely complementing that with a few areas on this mock that have a little bit more gray to them, so it kind of looks like some more mechanical, bionicle details there kind of poking out. I think it's pretty cool and pretty clever. Now, of course, this was built over on some digital program, whether that's Studio or LDD or LDraw or whatever. That's, I don't actually know. But that's always something else to do as well, as jump over onto one of those programs. Just Google Lego Digital Designer and download that, or head over to Bricklink and design something on Studio, and then you can order those pieces as well, which is pretty rad. Yeah, man, you can do that, and nothing wrong with doing that. Sometimes some people are like, building on a PC is not true mocking, and I say, well, who says? Where is the rules that state what a true mock is that says that? If you want to build on the computer, it's a great idea in my opinion. Especially, I think it's even cooler doing so because you get access to all the pieces, and even in colors that they don't even exist in. It's a fun thing to do, and you get some awesome digital renders like this. It looks great. It's a really nice work. Also, by the way, I've been showing you as this is going a whip version of this, and then the final actual picture, which is a more sort of beautifully rendered version, and then the other one is it in what I assume is Lego Digital Designer. Always a good thing to do. Check the Flickr, check the mock pages, check the Instagrams, wherever it's posted. Look at all the pictures of the mock. You never know what you might learn. Maybe even look through some of the old whip pictures of it, because you might see certain areas that aren't covered up, or some areas that are exposed, and you go, oh, that's how he built the head design, So it's you never know what you might learn. It's a fun thing to do. On to the next one. This mock is by Jack Frost and is called The Judge. So this is not a revamp of a Bionicle, it is a revamp of a Slicer/Throwbot. And the set was called Judge or Jet, depending on where you're from. I believe some of those sets were titled differently around the world. Pretty cool. What I'm going to title this style of revamp is a total redo. Because this looks vastly different to the original one. Sure, there are a few aspects of it that are slightly similar, specifically the jets, the sort of rotor blades, that sort of thing. Roughly, the color scheme as well, of course. All sorts of a few other things as well, but it is a pretty big departure from it. And there's honestly nothing wrong with doing that. I've done that in the past with a few other mocks, Bionicle things. I've gone, that's what the original looked like. Why didn't I totally reimagine it? Because that's always a really fun thing to do. Great idea. So let's focus on what Jack has done here. I think it's a fantastic part use using some of these Technic pneumatic tube pieces. So they come in a lot of different Technic sets. You kind of pump it with air, and you let it go, and then the play features sort of do what they do. That's the awesome thing about Technic. You can get so many awesome motorized, crazy things going on. But those pneumatic tube pieces work perfectly well here as just kind of creating this sort of very awesome kind of industrial piston kind of look. And that part naturally has those three colors on it. That sort of black and the yellow, and then I believe that's chrome silver. And yeah, it kind of gives it this more kind of industrial, robotic look to it. It's beautiful. Adding those jets, or those rotors rather, on there. It's a great way of attaching them. And I think it's definitely a highlight of this mock. Really ties it all together and gives it a unique look. It's super cool. And then there's a part that's been repeated a whole bunch here, which I found it on Bricklink. It's called Large Figure Armor Plate Small. Funky, small, cool looking piece. It came on this cool Lego Technic set, and it came, I believe, with 15 of them. So I imagine Jack Frost here has bought that set, and then he's put a whole bunch of them here on this mock. I think it's a good idea to repeat pieces like that on a mock. You get the same textures and the same sort of visual style repeated throughout the mock. You get a nice sense of unity throughout it. Everything looks like it flows together nicely, because it, for the most part, does. Always a cool idea to do, and those pieces are awesome because they straight up connect to CCBS parts, and I don't think, well, we've got some of them in Star Wars Ultra Build sets, but they come here in yellow in this awesome Technic set, so really, really awesome piece to play with that has a lot of funky connection points and is really just a really nice looking part, so it's something to recommend, something to play around with. And it flows very beautifully with that slicer head here. Very, very nicely done. Onto the last one in this episode. This is a mock by Brickelson and is called Vakama the Horde Berserker. This is a very fun, just reading the description here, this is a fun what if. If Vakama from 2005, the hero who defeated Makuta and saved his city, what if he plunged even further into darkness? and the sort of Hordika venom corrupted his mind and his spirit, and he was no longer a terror at all. He was a horrific beast. It's a cool concept, so that's definitely a fun idea for revamping a mock, or what I was going to sort of title this style of revamp is having it being a little bit more inspired by the movies. You know, the Bionicle movies always had the very more different visual distinct styles, and I think certain aspects of this mock are definitely riffing off of the movie there. Or I titled this style of revamp just going ham. Making it massive, huge, different, vastly changing it, adding some new stuff to it, giving him a crown, because why not? Adding a whole bunch of play features and pipes and system pieces and editing the photos and blah. Great idea. Just turn it up to 11, add everything to it, go crazy. Great idea for revamping a mock. So I love how he's totally changed up the shape of Hordika Vakama here, giving him this more sort of bestial, almost kind of ape-like look. Super cool. Really love the way he's warped all of the limbs there, kind of helping to continue that. Because that was kind of the concept with the Hordika, wasn't it? Was making them look mutated and kind of messed up because of those the Viscerac venom there. And I think giving the limbs these odd sort of shapes and bent looks, and some are a bit bigger and some are a bit smaller. The fingers on one are massive and the fingers on the other are a lot smaller. Doing that sort of asymmetry and funky odd-shaped limbs really helps to convey that. It's really cool. Awesome system-built custom head here, and a lot of kind of repeated uses of Exoforce ratchet joint pieces. You can specifically see them on the lower arms and the fingers, or the big fingers there, not those little tiny ones. And also there's a few more there on the feet. They're everywhere, man. Definitely a good idea to use some of those pieces. Why? Because those ratchet joints are very strong. Every time you turn them, it's a big old in the actual part there. It looks super cool. They're very sturdy naturally, If you're using them on a mock, you're going to get a pretty sturdy amount of connection. You're also going to get a pretty good amount of posability from them as well. So if you're looking to create a really posable, sturdy mock, I'd recommend using some of those, especially if you're making a much larger mock and you still want that level of posability. As long as it's not too top heavy, those pieces should be able to support a little bit more weight than your typical kind of socket and ball joint or mixel joint or something like that. So definitely something to think about. Also love the pop-up Hordika spinner here on his back. Really fun addition that looks super cool. I love how hidden it looks, and then it sort of just pops out and it's like, oh, I thought that was just a hunch on his back. That's super cool. Really fun idea. But overall, really, there's a lot to love about this level. The tubes, the overall look of him, he's super rad. Really nice work there. Brickelson, and really nice work to everybody in this revamp-themed Bionicle Inspiration Series episode. Hope you enjoyed it very much. If you're looking to submit some of your own mocks to the show, you can do so, and you can do so through the link that you are currently seeing on your screen. Send me some pictures of the mock, maybe even a link to it online, ideally the name of the mock. Anything else you want to include, send it my way, and one day it'll be on the show. And don't be discouraged. No mock is too good or too bad. I'll accept anything. Don't be afraid, my son. Submit away. Don't know why you're my son. Apparently, I'm adopting you. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode. Have a fantastic day, and don't forget to check the links in the description to all the mocks that you saw in today's episode. Those guys are great, and you should show them some love. Anyway, thank you very much. Happy building. See you soon.